Greetings, YouTube. The doctor is in. Dr. Urias Papers here, coming at you with another commentary on role-playing games, Dungeons & Dragons, Pathfinder, and the company Paizo. And we're also going to talk about how they're all connected to this article here, Diamond Distributors, who is in bankruptcy court right now, which they declared bankruptcy in January, and how a lot of products from these particular companies might or might not be in jeopardy. So we're going to talk about all that. A lot of stuff to go over. Don't go anywhere and stay tuned. Okay, before we begin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you like this video. Hit the like button if you have any questions or comments. Please leave a question or a comment. And don't forget to hit that notification bell. And do not forget to share this video. All right, so the title of this article here is Diamond Distributors Asks Bankruptcy Court for Ownership of Publishers' Consignment Inventory. So if you didn't know, Diamond Distributors was, and still is, because there really isn't anybody, one of the largest distributors of comic books, role-playing games, and collectibles in the United States. And they declared bankruptcy in January. And they're in bankruptcy court right now. They filed Chapter 11, which isn't go out of business. That's Chapter 13. Chapter 11 is restructuring, but they have a bunch of debts, and the courts get to oversee those, and they get to make sure that the debtors, the people they owe money to, get paid. One of them is Chase Bank. So it sounds like Diamond took a bunch of money out and financed a bunch of their operation, and now they owe a bunch of money. So right now, there is a warehouse or several warehouses, and there is a bunch of merchandise from a bunch of different companies that's sitting in that or those warehouses. Now, Diamond Distributors is a consignment business, meaning the publisher or the owner of the company that is trying to sell a book or a thing, they make it, they get it printed, and then they hand their stock over to Diamond, who is the distributor, and then Diamond takes it and they sell it. So they have some kind of contract with the owner of the company, all these different companies. Diamond then sells it, and they sell it to, a comic book store or a game store or a Walmart or a Target, some kind of big box store. The owner of the company that made that, the publisher of that, like Marvel Comics or Paizo, they get to recoup up to 50%, but it's usually a little bit below 50%. Diamond takes initially like a percentage off of that. It depends on the company and the contract they have with Diamond and how it works. And then the big box store pays for 50% of the cover price, and then they sell it 100%. So they make 50% off it. So if it goes from the publisher to Diamond to Walmart, and it's a $100 product, Walmart buys it for $50. Diamond probably gets to keep $10, and then the publisher gets like $40, and that's just a guess. But there's some percentage that the publisher gets. And what they're getting, they better make sure that they get more money than they spent on publishing that material. So that's why publishing costs are really important. So let's get into the article. Diamond Comic Distributors, which filed for bankruptcy in January, has asked the bankruptcy court to allow it to sell its consignment inventory in order to pay off its creditors. So it has a warehouse or warehouses, and it is storing a bunch of people's stuff, a bunch of publisher stuff, games, books, comic books, collectibles, statues, whatever, you name it, and they are asking this court that is overseeing their Chapter 11 if they can take what is in there, because the publisher can't get to it because it's in Diamond's control, if Diamond can take it and sell it. So, and it gives a little description about what consignment inventory is that I just went over. Diamond has listed 128 companies, see below, and we're going to go through that list, for which it currently holds consignment stock. Some of these are tabletop games, as well as many comic book publishers, including Goodman Games, who make Dungeon Crawl Classics, Green Ronin Games, who make things like Mutants and Mastermind, and Paizo Publishing, which makes Pathfinder and Starfinder. Others include comic book publishers like Marvel and DC. So these are the two big comic book publishers in the United States. They don't actually distribute their own product. They give it to Diamond, and Diamond distributes almost all of it, along with a number of toy companies. So some publishers are saying that they are owed payments for retail sales from late 2024, just prior to Diamond's bankruptcy in January 2025, in addition to having stock currently in Diamond's possession. So it sounds like Diamond owes a bunch of people a bunch of money. So normally unsold stock, which still belongs to the publishers, would be returned. Diamond has asked the bankruptcy court to allow it to take ownership of that stock and sell it for the benefit of its creditors. So Diamond has this stuff, and all they're paying for right now is to store it and possibly ship it, and then they would recoup all the rest of it. They probably could sell a $100 book for $20 and recoup a bunch of money. And the publisher's not going to see any of it. So one of Diamond's biggest creditors is Chase Bank, which will likely be at the top of the priority list of creditors to be reimbursed. In its filing, Diamond says in its possession of significant inventory that was shipped on consignment basis, the consignors have not satisfied the requirements under applicable law to perform their interests in this consigned inventory. Diamond claims that this gives them the right to transfer title to this inventory free and clear of the consignor's interests. Essentially, some important paperwork, and it's called a UCC-1 financing statement, which apparently has to be filed for every new product. So, for instance, Marvel Comics publishes hundreds of comic books, different ones, every month. And they would have to fill these out and file these UCC financing statements for every single comic book. So that's a nightmare, and they're not doing that. So not filed by consignment vendors like Marvel and DC and tabletop gaming companies mentioned earlier. And I bet a lot of these smaller companies like Goodman Games and Green Ronin, they can't afford to do this. They can't afford to have somebody full-time on staff fill out these UCC-1 finance statements. So they're saying because these finance statements were not filled out, that they own the inventory. So, and this means that they forfeit the right to the stock in question. Diamond's filing says none of the vendors that provided consignment inventory to any of the debtors filed a UCC-1 financing statement against any of the debtors prior to the petition date. So that means when they turned over their stuff to Diamond, who is the debtor, they didn't file this form, and they're in trouble now. So following the closing of the sale of substantial majority of their assets, the debtors are in possession of significant inventory that was shipped to the debtors on a consignment basis. The consignors have not satisfied the requirements under the applicable law to perfect their interests in the consigned inventory, as further explained below, to give the debtors the right to transfer title to this inventory free and clear. The debtors accordingly seek to sell or otherwise dispose of the consigned inventory free or clear of interest if any of the consignors. To that end, the debtors seek approval of consignment sale procedures to permit them to market, sell, and otherwise dispose of consigned inventory expeditiously, minimizing costs and maximizing recovery in order to generate the best result for the estates. So, in order to pay like Chase Bank back, they're just going to sell all this stuff for pennies on the dollar, and that'll be it. So Paizo, and this is an update, Paizo has announced that its upcoming releases, and we're going to go to the Paizo website because they have a article about this, but their upcoming releases will not be available at major bookstores or at Amazon because the company has stopped shipping products to Diamond. So apparently, Paizo publishes stuff, they print it out, they get all their inventory together, they ship it to Diamond, and then Diamond distributes it to major bookstores. So I don't know what major bookstores mean. That could mean Borders Books, it could mean Books A Million, it could mean Walmart, it could mean Target, it could mean and Amazon. So it sounds like Diamond also ships to the Amazon fulfillment centers. So this includes 12 August releases and 10 September releases, such as the Starfinder Player Core, Starfinder GM Core, Starfinder or Pathfinder Battlecry, and more. And let me say this first off, this is bad because this stuff is available around Gen Con on purpose because they want to show it off at Gen Con. And now I don't know how much is there. We're going to talk about that. So so the court has scheduled a hearing. So this isn't final yet. Diamond has requested this, and they have a court hearing on July 21st to hear objections from the affected vendors. So all of these companies below are all getting lawyers, and they're all going to show up on the 21st, and they're going to argue, and then the judge gets to make a decision. But it sounds like, and I'm not a lawyer, but it sounds like this UCC financing statement stuff may stop these companies from doing this. So here's some of the companies, and some of the ones that I recognize right off the bat in here are companies like Alien Books, Antarctic Press, Apex Publishing, Bandai. Bandai's a huge toy company. Battle Quest Comics. Let's see here. Dark Horse Comics, DC Comics. DC Comics is one of the largest. Diamond Comic Distributor Stock. That's probably their own company. Fair Square Graphics. Frank Miller Presents. That's the Frank Miller. Gemstone Publishing. Wow, I don't know that one. Gen Manga Entertainment. I think that's a big one. There's Goodman Games, who make DCC. Green Ronin, there they are right there. Heavy Metal Magazine, that's a big one. Image and Image Comics, that's a huge one. Those are big comic companies. Let's see what else. Manga Classics. Marvel Comics is probably the biggest one on this whole list. Paizo is on here. There's Paizo right there. They're number 90. These are all in alphabetical order. This is on N-World, by the way. There's Roll for Combat. So that's Steven Glickers. And he's put some videos out, too, on YouTube. So if you look up Roll for Combat on YouTube, you'll find that. Seven Seas Ghost Ship. There's a lot. There's a ton on here. Valiant Comics. Just a lot of different stuff. So let's take a look at the Paizo article here. So this came out on the 2nd, and it says, as many of you know, Diamond Distributors declared bankruptcy on January 14th. Hundreds of game publishers, including Paizo, have partnered with Diamond to sell their products into the book trade. So they actually list out who they do some business with. Barnes & Noble, Ingram, Booktopia, and others. So they just list a few of them. Diamond has also sold Pathfinder and Starfinder into Amazon for us. So again, like I said, Pathfinder prints the books, they transfer the inventory over to Diamond, and then Diamond transfers the inventory over to an Amazon fulfillment center. So it sounds like things that were supposed to go to an Amazon fulfillment center are now at a Diamond warehouse, and they're stuck there. And Diamond may turn around and just sell it to Amazon, and then Amazon's going to turn around and sell it for the cover price. So we will never see any savings off of any of this stuff. Paizo has stopped shipping products to Diamond. Okay. This means that our August releases will not be widely available at major bookstores or Amazon. While these sites will likely continue to list products for sale or pre-order, most orders for these titles will not be able to be fulfilled. To stay up to date with your collection, please stop by your favorite local game store and ask them to order our upcoming releases purchase them directly here on Paizo.com or sign up for one of our subscriptions. So my first question is, what's Paizo doing? So if Diamond was their #1 distributor to local game stores, Amazon, and a bunch of big box stores, what are they doing now if they're not using Diamond? And pretty much Diamond was the only game in town for distribution. So are they having to do this themselves? And I doubt very much that Paizo can afford that. All right, so they say, we expect Pathfinder and Starfinder products to remain unavailable through book trade channels for several months as Paizo determines our next step, and this matter works its way through the bankruptcy court. So they're probably fighting in court. They probably got some lawyers that are going to show up on the 21st of July to argue. And because they said that this stuff is going to take several months to get out, they lost a bunch of product. I think they are saying it's gone, and they're going to have to reprint a bunch of stuff, and they're still figuring out how to ship it. Paizo is not that big of a company, and we're going to look at that too. So the best thing you can do to help Paizo and the 100+ publishers caught up in the Diamond bankruptcy is to order from them directly or go to your local game store and ask them to pre-order. But is the local game store going to be able to get them? So here are a list of the August and September releases that are not going to be available. Starfinder Player Core, and that's a big one. That's a major rollout for them. They're rolling this out for Gen Con, and I find it hard to believe that Paizo is not going to be impacted negatively by this. They have to be impacted negatively by loss of sales for this. So it's the Starfinder Player Core, Retail Edition, Special Edition, Starfinder Combat Pad, Starfinder Murder in the Metal City Deluxe Adventure, Starfinder Infinity Deck Card Game, a novel, Pathfinder Battlecry, which is the next big Pathfinder book. So they have nothing else coming out. This is it. This is the whole, for 2 months. They've got an adventure path coming out, a new flip map, and then the GM core for Starfinder, and the player portfolio for Starfinder, a flip map, and the treasure vault for Pathfinder, remastered pocket edition. So there's a bunch of stuff here that represents major portions of their inventory. So I've got a couple of questions. First off, when we go to Google and I ask Google, how much revenue does Paizo bring in annually? It says multiple sources, including Zippia and ZoomInfo, list Paizo's annual inventory at $19.2 million. Other sources, such as Kona, also $19.2 million. One source from June 2025 indicated Paizo's annual revenue is in the range of $10 to $100 million. I doubt it's $100 million. And an older estimate from January 2023 suggested that Paizo's annual revenue is around $34.7 million. The reason that number is a high estimate is because that was right around the time of the OGL crisis, when they made a bunch of money and because everybody was turning away from Wizards of the Coast. So here's what I think. I think that their revenue is somewhere between $20 and $30 million. So if we go back to this, and let's say 10% of their revenue is tied up in, or they're dependent. Maybe they do a good 25% of their sales around Gen Con. A quarter of theirs, maybe they do 30, 40, 50% of their sales around Gen Con time, because this is Gen Con time. That is a percentage that is going to affect their sales. And are they actually going to be able to absorb this? So how much of their product right now is sitting at Diamond? Is it $1 million worth of product? Is it $2, $3, $4, $10 million worth of product? We don't know. And then how much is Paizo losing? So they are now going to have to pay a bunch of lawyers to go and argue in court. And that costs a ton of money, which I know Paizo probably doesn't have. They are possibly going to have to reprint this if they lose this, because they may not get this inventory back. So that's going to cost a bunch of money. They are going to have to figure out their distribution, which is also going to cost more money. I mean, there's a bunch of extra costs that are going to go into this, and then they've lost this money. They already paid for these books, and then Diamond's just going to take them and sell them. So, they could lose a substantial amount of their revenue this year. And then my last question is, can Paizo take this hit? So their business model, my theory about their business model is it's based off of digital sales. So they sell things on their website, and then they sell things through like some of the bundle websites as well. And then they have direct sales from their web store, and they must have a shipping center themselves to ship stuff out directly from their web store. But that costs a lot of money because they're paying for all the shipping themselves. Then they make money from store sales, so that's local game stores, and then big box stores like Borders and Walmart and things like that. And then they make money from Amazon. I got notes down here that I'm looking at. And then they make money from Amazon because they've already said that they ship stuff to Diamond, and they were letting Diamond ship stuff and distribute stuff out to Amazon distribution centers. So now, one thing you will notice on this list is Wizards of the Coast is not on this list. Hasbro is not on this list. And Dungeons and Dragons is not on this list. And that is because I believe Hasbro has its own distribution operation that they pay for themselves. So there's a whole bunch of other companies, and Paizo is one of the biggest ones. It's Paizo, DC Comics, and Marvel Comics are probably in the top 5 on this list. And all the rest of these companies, like Goodman Games, they are definitely not. One, they won't be able to afford the lawyers. And two, they won't be able to afford the hit. They probably have substantial amounts of products. I know Stephen Glicker was saying he has $120,000 worth of product that are sitting at a Diamond warehouse right now. And he says he's going to be fine, but some of these other companies might not be fine. So we could be seeing effects from this for quite some time. So are things over for Paizo? Well, we'll have to keep an eye out for that. Are things over for Dungeons and Dragons? No, definitely not. Hasbro's got its own gig and their own game. All right, that is the video I have for everybody. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I will catch everybody later.